Answering MCQ past year questions is not as easy as it seems to be due to the questions are getting tougher, trickier, and due to the limited time that you have in answering all the MCQ questions in AS Physics as well as IGCSE Physics. So in this video, I am going to give you 4 top tips that I have been applying in answering my AS as well as IGCSE Physics. Now, I do need you to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more top tips, for more shortcut, for more secrets discovered in making your physics easier. But I do need you to stay until the end of the video because not just the 4 tips that I'm giving you, but also applying the 4 tips and teach you the proper way in applying the 4 tips in my video, as well as to give you extra tips. So you have to stay until the end of the video. Stay tuned. Tip number 1, I call it as rule out method. What is this? It is called putting the big cross to the choice or the choices that you have confirmed, not the answer. How do you do this? Let us try with the past year question in AS Physics first, which is a statement of the principle of conservation of momentum. So when you have the pencil or the pen with you, make sure that you underline the important statement. So you are supposed to find a statement which is related to principle of conservation of momentum. So we have to go through all the choices one by one and use the rule out rule to rule out the choice or choices that we confirm, not the answer. So look at A. A force is equal to the rate of change of momentum of the body upon which it acts. So this is Newton's second law. I'm very sure that this is nothing to do with principle of conservation of momentum. So let us put a big cross to it. What about B? In a perfectly elastic collision, the relative momentum of the bodies before impact is equal to their relative momentum after the impact. Sounds correct to me, but in a way, I still think that this statement is biased towards perfectly elastic collision. Is principle of conservation of momentum related to only perfectly elastic collision? What about the other collisions, such as inelastic collision? So, but since I'm not 100% sure that this is not statement related to principle of conservation of momentum, I'll just leave it first. So I'll look at C. Momentum of a body is a product of mass of the body and its velocity. I am very confirmed that this is a definition of momentum. So I'm going to put a big cross to C. So let us look at D. The total momentum of a system of interacting bodies remains constant, providing no external force S. This seems to be exactly what stated in principle of conservation of momentum and not being biased to a collision, elastic collision or inelastic collision only. So I am definitely choose D as my final answer. What about IGCSE? A cyclist travels down a hill from rest. Okay, you know that this is from rest. You have to underline this just to make sure that this is actually the keyword that help you to find your answer quicker. At point X, without paddling, the cyclist applies his brakes and the cycle stops at point Y. So I know at X, it is at rest. It means that it is not moving. And at Y, it stops. It also means that it is not moving. Therefore, okay, which energy changes have taken place between X and Y? I can eliminate C and D because kinetic energy is energy related to motion. So since at point X, it is not possible to have kinetic energy since the cyclist and the cycle are at rest. So therefore, eliminate C and D. So go back to A. Gravitational potential converted to kinetic energy converted to thermal energy. Seems correct to me, but I'm just going to prove that B is wrong. I'm just going to make sure that B is wrong answer. So B, gravitational potential converted to thermal converted to kinetic. Kinetic at point Y, is it possible? Because point Y, the cycle stops at point Y. So it shouldn't have kinetic energy. So B is definitely not the correct answer. So therefore the answer is A. Now, tip number 2, check the unit or units. You know that all the physics question is related to unit. And how do they trick you by using the units? They're giving you different units. So you make sure that before you do your calculation, make sure that the units are, maybe if the units are different, maybe you want to convert to make sure that their units are the same. Like maybe mm is given and then the other length is measured using cm. So you're going to convert, whether you convert mm to cm or cm to mm. Just make sure that the units tally to each other. So I'm talking about example in AS physics first. So an aircraft initially stationary on a runway takes off with a speed of 85 km per hour in a distance of no more than 1.2 km. So what is the minimum constant acceleration necessary for the aircraft? So I know that the initial velocity is equal to 0. This is a takeoff speed, and this is a distance, and they ask about acceleration. Now, when I look at all the four choices are measured in meter per second square. And look at my speed, my V, it is in kilometer per hour, and my distance is in kilometer. So I have to convert the kilometer to meter, and I have to convert the hour to second to make sure that the units are finally tally with the choices, the units from on all the choices here. So V is 85 kilometer per hour. This is how I write it. And then kilo is one of the prefixes which carries the value of 10 to the power of 3. But if you do not remember that, it doesn't matter. So all you need to do is just to use your math knowledge. 1 kilometer is 1,000 meter. You could put 1,000, 85 times 1,000. Doesn't matter. Not an issue here. And 1 hour is 60 minutes, 1 minute, 60 seconds. So therefore, just use your calculator. I'm using mine here, by the way. 85 times 10 to the power of 3 divided by 3600. And my answer is 23.6 meter per second. That is my velocity. And what about the distance, which is as 1.2 kilometer? I'm going to convert to meter. So you can put 1.2 times 10 to the power of 3 meter, or 1.2 times 10 to the 1.2 times 1,000 meter. It doesn't matter. And the next step is to write down the equation that is related to acceleration. So this is definitely kinematics equation. So I'm going to write down S equal to ut plus half at squared, v equal to u plus at, and v squared equals u squared plus 2as. So now I cannot use first equation because the time is not being given. So I rule this out. I cannot use the second equation because time is not given as well. So therefore, I am going to use the third equation. So v squared is 23.6 square equals u is 0 square plus 2a, and the distance is 1.2 times 10 to the power of 3. Therefore, my a could be 23.6 square over 2 times 1.2 times 10 to the power of 3. So 23.6, you square it, divided by 2 times 1.2 times 10 to the power of 3, and the answer is 0.232 meter per second square. So the answer is A. What about IGCSE? Let us see. A metal block has the dimensions shown. Its mass is 1,000 grams. What is the density of the metal? When you see this kind of question, recall the equation of density. So density is defined as mass per volume. Since this is a rectangular shape, therefore the volume is length times breadth times width. So just stop in the value. But before that, I got to make sure that the units are tally. So mass is in gram. So I look at the units of density of all the 4 choices here. They're measured in gram. And what about the volume? cm times cm times cm. I got cm cube. Oh, all the units are in cm cube. So I do not have to convert my gram to kilogram or cm to meter. So I can just sub in the value 1000 gram over 2 cm times 10 cm times 5 cm. And I have 1000 gram over 2 times 10 times 5 cm times cm times cm gives you cm cube. So, oh, D is my answer. Easy, right? Tip number 3. Use symbols and keywords to lead to the equation or equations. So now, what do I mean by that? You know, sometimes when a question is being given, there's too many informations given at the same time. So they give you too many data, too many numbers together with the units. So sometimes you couldn't recall what is or what are the equations that I'm supposed to use to lead me to the final answer. So let us try with past the question from AS. Light of wavelength 700 nanometer is incident on a pair of slits forming fringes 3 millimeter apart on the screen. What is the fringe spacing when light of wavelength 350 nanometer is used and the slit separation is double? So I want you to underline. First of all, just underline important thing. Important statement. So do you see this? A pair of slits. So you know that when it is about a pair of slits, this is definitely related to Young's double slit. Young double slit is related to interference. There is only one equation for interference, which is lambda equals AX over D, where lambda is a wavelength, A is the slit separation. This is double slit, so the separation between the 2 slits is A. X is the fringe separation. So the separation between first bright to the second bright, or dark fringe to the next dark fringe. That is called X. And D is the distance from the double slit to the screen. So since 2 wavelengths are given, so we need to come up with 2 simultaneous equations, but stick to this equation. Now I'm going to write down the symbols that help me to identify or sub the correct number into my equation. So this is the first wavelength given, so I put lambda 1. And this is the first fringes that is given, which is x1 on the screen. And what is the fringe spacing? You have to find x2. And when lambda 2 of 350 nanometer is used. And the slit separation, the first one, maybe the slit separation, I just put A. So the slit separation now is double, which is 2A. Now I just want my first equation first, which is related to lambda 1, x1, A, and D. So because they didn't mention D, it means that the distance between the double slit and the screen is constant. So I'm going to stick with D. So 700 nanometer is equal to A, X is 3 millimeter. Not going to change that millimeter to meter because all the choices here are in millimeter. And D, this is my first equation. And my second equation is 350 nanometer is equal to 2A. Remember, double. Slit separation is double, so this is 2A. And I put here as X2 over D. This is the second equation. So since I'm supposed to find x2, I am using the second equation, divide the first equation. So 350 nanometer over 700 nanometer equals 2A x2 over D. Just invert that times D over A times 3 mm. Now this is the most interesting and my favorite part, cancelling. A and A you can just cancel because they divide. It is just division here. You can just cancel wherever you can cancel, nanometer and nanometer. So 350 divide 700, I got 0.5, which is equal to 2x2 over 3 mm. So x2 is equal to 0.5 times 3 mm over 2. So let me do my calculation. 0.5 times 3 divide 2. And I got 0.5 0.75 mm. So the answer is A. What about IGCSE? So for IGCSE, an electric generator produces an electromotive force EMF of 200 volt and produces a current of 3 ampere in a circuit. Generator is driven by an engine with a power of 2.4 kilowatt. What is the efficiency of the generator? First of all, what is the equation of efficiency? Efficiency is just a ratio. There are 3 ratios regarding efficiency. First one is useful output power divided by input power times 100%. That is efficiency. Second ratio is useful output work over input work times 100%. And the third ratio is useful output energy over input energy times 100%. So which ratio that you are supposed to use? Let us look at the data given. So they give me V, they give us V, they give us a current, and they give us the input power. When the input power is being given and you are asked to find the efficiency, I am definitely going for this ratio. Useful output energy, useful output power over input power and times 100%. So what is the useful output power? Useful output power, remember one of the equation of the power, which is related to electrical power, is IV. P equals IV. So this is my output power. So I is 3 and V is 200. So therefore I get 600 watt as my useful output power. Just sub it in, 600 or watt over 2.4 is in kilowatt. Could you see that? The units are the same, but the power is different. So you got to convert that kilowatt to watt. So kilo is 1,000. So you just times 1,000 over times 1,000 watt times 100%. So 600 times 100 divide 2.4 times 1,000. And I got 25% as my final answer. So B is the answer. So you just need to be careful with the units and make sure that they are of the same unit. Whether you convert kilo or nano, just be careful with all these prefixes. And tip number 4, which is the last tip, use substitution method. You know, some of the question, when they give you a question, then they didn't ask you to calculate anything, but they asked you to use some physics law or physics concept to guess what happens to this physical quantity when this physical quantity is decreasing or increasing. What happens to the next physical quantity? Now, let us look at AS question. In the circuit below, the ammeter reading is I and the voltmeter reading is V. Could you see that no value is being given? So when the switch is closed, which row describes what happens to I and V? I is measured by ammeter, V is measured by voltmeter. So how do you do this? How do you guess it correctly and accurately? So this is how I do it. I would just say that initially, when the switch is open, this is the path of the flow of my current. Could you see that? So these two resistors are arranged in series. So I just simply put a value to this battery. Is this a battery? I just state that this is a battery. So with 10 volt. And then resistor, maybe 10 ohm, and this is 10 ohm. So I would just calculate the reading on voltmeter and the reading on ammeter first. So 10 V equals to IR. This is the equation that I'm going to use, Ohm's law. So this V is for us to calculate the total current that flows through the circuit first. 10 is equal to I. Since these two resistors are connected in series, so I'll just add them up. 10 ohm plus 10 ohm, that gives me 20 ohm. So I is equal to 10 over 20, which is 0.5 ampere. And I'm done with that. What about V value? V is equal to IR. V value here is the reading from the voltmeter. So VI is equal to 0.5 since these two resistors are being connected in series, so the same current flows through them. 0.5 times the resistance of one of the resistor, which is 10. So this gives me 5 volt. I'm done with that. So now when they say that the switch is closed, when the switch is closed, I want you to look closely. When the switch is closed, this is the path, new path of the current. Current would not flow through the second resistor. You know why? Because current is like human. I don't know about you, but I'm talking about myself. I love shortcut. If there is a way to do it in a quicker manner, I will do it. That is what I call shortcut. So we will always choose easier path for us to do stuff. Same goes to this current. Current will always choose easier path to flow. Since this is a switch which is being closed and the wire has negligible resistance, so therefore the current is definitely going to choose easier path to flow instead of flowing through the resistor, which is of 10 ohm, more resistance that you need to overcome. So now we will check on that. So for the final reading, so this resistor is not counted as the current flows through only one resistor. So I'm going to do my calculation, V equal to IR again, but I'm going to use different color for you to see it clearer. So 10 is equal to I, this R is related to only one R, which is 10 ohm. So I is equal to 1 ampere. And what about the voltmeter reading? Voltmeter reading is because the current would not flow through the 10 ohm resistor. So there's no current flow through that. So therefore, voltmeter reading will have to decrease to 0. And what happened to the current reading? You see 0.5 increases to 1 ampere. So the current value increases. B is the answer. And what about IGCSE question? A lamp is connected in 4 circuits in turn, each using identical batteries. The resistors are all identical. Wow, this is a clue here. And in which circuit will the lamp be the brightest? Now, the brightness of the lamp actually depending on the current that flows. More current, brighter the lamp. Or potential difference across the lamp. So this is not related to potential difference, so I rule this out. So now since these lamp, all the lamps are being connected to the identical battery, so I'll just put this 10 volt, easier for me. Just put any numbers that you can think of, any easier number for you to do your calculation. And let's put that resistor of resistance 10 ohm, because all the resistors are identical, so I just put 10 ohm, 10 ohm, 10 ohm, and 10 ohm. So now you know that current and resistor, they are enemy. If you come, I won't go. So if current increase, meaning to say that resistance has to decrease. So you need to find the smallest resistance, the smallest total resistance that gives you the highest current. So in conclusion, the lamp will be the brightest. So now we are going to do that. So I'm going to look at one. One is 10 ohm. So the resistance is 10 ohm. And the second one, because, oh, this is also 10 ohm. So let me change to this color first. So these two are connected in parallel. So I will have to solve for these two first. For parallel circuit, to find the total resistance between these two parallel resistors, so it is equal to 1 over 10 plus 1 over 10, then you invert it. So 1 over 10, 1 over 10 plus 1 over 10 plus 1 over 10, then you need to invert it. You get 5 ohm here. You can use your calculator to do it. So my circuit will be a simplified circuit, which I'm going to draw it. It will be like this. This is 10 ohm and this is 5 ohm. So these two are in series. Can you see that? 10 ohm and 5 ohm are in series. So total resistance is 10 plus 5, which is equal to 15 ohm. What about C? These two resistors are in parallel and total resistance is 5 ohm. I have calculated here. And D, the two resistors are in series, so the total resistance becomes 10 ohm plus 10 ohm, which is equal to 20 ohm. So which one gives you the smallest resistance in this case? The smallest resistance is actually C, which is 5 ohm. Therefore, our answer is C. Lamp in C will give you, is the brightest. Light up the brightest. So not only the 4 tips that I told you that I'll be giving you, but also extra tips here to help you to answer your MCQ question smoothly. So, okay, I know you're listening. I'm doing this first. Extra tip number 1. Make sure, because you have 40 questions to answer in a limited time, so make sure that you only spend 1.2 minutes to 1.5 minutes on each question. Don't spend more than that. If you think that the question is very hard and require more thinking, just maybe circle it, skip it first, and do the questions that are easier first. And extra tip number 2, do not skip reading, even though the statement is a long statement, because I want to ensure that you don't miss anything. Because when you miss some important data or some important information there, you could lose mark and you couldn't get the final answer correctly. So that is the reason why you have to read every statement and understand the statements well. And extra tip 3, make sure that you underline, like what I did just now by showing you how I answer the passive questions. You underline the important facts or details, statements, or the units which are different. All you need to do is just to underline or just circle it to avoid making careless mistake. And extra tip number 4, remember to press your calculator correctly. You know, inside the examination hall, stress could be unbearable. I sometimes press wrongly as well. I want to press 2.5, but instead of pressing 2.5, I press 2.4. And at the end of the time, when I couldn't get the answer, I get panic. So make sure that you stay calm, press the calculator correctly. And extra tip 5, for MCQ question, valid to both AS Physics and IGCSE Physics. So some of the questions will be repeated. Between 3 to 5 questions, exactly the same question will be repeated. So all you need to do is do 10 year series of past year papers. But you know, syllabus changes. So therefore, while you're doing the past year question, also make sure that you stick to the latest syllabus. I mean, your syllabus. So those are the tips that I'll be giving you, and I hope those are the tips. Those tips helped you in answering your MCQ questions smoother. And I hope that you could apply this tip. If you think that these tips help you, please do comment below. Thank you very much. And do subscribe to my YouTube channel for all the tips. And these are all the passive questions that I'm discussing in my YouTube channel. But if you face any difficulties in any of the passive question and you need me to discuss on the passive question, just comment below. And all the best in your exam and all the best in answering your MCQ question. So I'll see you in my next video.